Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this premium webinar. My name is Jan Leleyo, representing Gated Talent. Today, we are joined by Shawn Rutter, founder and managing director of Excelsior Search, a global financial technology executive search firm, who will discuss tactics to stay on executive recruiters' radars. So hi, Shawn, and thanks for being with us today.
Hi, thanks. Hi, Jan. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for my invitation back, actually. So what's my second Gated Talent webinar, isn't it? Yeah, so
It is.
okay.
It is.
Okay, let's crack on.
Shawn, just before we get started, just to remind the audience that there's a chat box in the panel on the side of your screen. So if you want to send us any questions during Shawn's presentation, please do so. And then we'll have a few minutes at the end to address them. So Shawn, please take it away.
That's great. Thank you, Jan. Who am I? I'm British and I'm based in London. And after graduating from university in 1991, I joined the British Army as a commissioned officer, served 7 years. And on leaving the Army, I joined search firm MRI International. I worked there for a year before founding Excelsior in 99. So for me, that's about 22 years now in search, so quite a while. And my firm, Excelsior, we're very boutique in what we do as headhunters, operating in the niche of financial markets, technology, data and research, capital markets, fintech. And we work C-suite down, so across general and regional management and across the functional areas of sales, professional services and product development for tech companies. And from London, we do recruit internationally across the Americas, EMEA and APAC. And I personally have experience conducting search assignments in 17 countries. But that's enough about me. Let's get on to why you're here today. So to start with, take a look at this survey, courtesy of Gated Talent. In this survey, a quarter of all people said they found their role via an executive search firm. So it really is a path to finding a role not to be ignored. In fact, for some top C-level roles, this will increase to 75% plus. Whether you are actively looking for a new career opportunity or not, it's important you stay on the radar of the right executive recruiters throughout your career. And today I'm just going to share a few insights and suggestions on how you might achieve this, what I'll call active and passive strategies. But I also suggest that it doesn't stop when you secure a role. Yes, you'll likely pull back on active tactics, but you should also keep passive strategies going. You might get found for the perfect role a few years down the line without having to lift a finger for it. Or if you become unhappy in a role or unfortunately lose your role, which forces you to actively look, you've done the groundwork to increase the chances of finding that next career role quickly. One question I'll ask you now is how many times in the past couple of years have you been called by executive recruiters with appropriate assignments? If that number is 0, 1 or 2, that in itself is clearly an indication that you're not on the right radars. If you're getting too many calls, perhaps I should say congratulations on that. But the question then is whether there are even the right types of role and the right types of executive recruiters. It really can be a matter of being in the right place at the right time, and you need to help yourself do that. And when writing this webinar, I felt it was important to also cover getting on the radars in the first place, letting alone staying there. So I'm covering both parts, and they're closely interrelated anyway, getting on the right radars and then staying there. First thing I'm going to highlight is the importance of making sure your collateral is in place and on point. As you'll know, the two key pieces of collateral are your CV, also known as the resume, and your LinkedIn profile. CVs, LinkedIn profiles are webinar subjects in their own, and each has a slightly different function. But this webinar isn't about how to write an on-point CV or on-point LinkedIn profile, but it is about getting found and keeping on radars. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of points on how these collateral items can help that. Keep them up to date. As you gain more experience and responsibilities, promotions with your company, make sure you update your CV and LinkedIn profiles. Perhaps at least once a year, take the time to do this. There would probably be nothing worse than a search firm having had your CV 5 years ago or finding your LinkedIn and dismissing you because they didn't see what they're looking for now at the next level. There's nothing like making a great first impression. Executive search consultants want to work with high quality talent, so you need to show them why you are someone they'll want to connect with. Also, if I'm reviewing a couple hundred profiles, it's only natural I'll be drawn to those that stand out initially. We want to see a CV and LinkedIn profiles that are well presented, well thought out, and contain the right information. For me, someone who has taken the time and effort to do this at whatever career level usually says something about the quality of the person behind. Now, these aesthetics aside, the way to make your profile really stand out to the right recruiters is through relevancy and quality, I like to say. These are the two things I'm scanning for every time I read a profile. Relevancy, when I look for profiles, my first qualifier is how relevant that profile might be to my clients' briefing requirements. So you do need to be specific and detailed on your candidate profile. Optimize it to be found through LinkedIn search or a CV search on a recruiter's database. A headhunting assignment will start with a client's wish list of requirements: industry, domain area, roles, education, and other profile experience. And almost all initial research compiling target lists is data-driven by selection criteria. So if you strategically seed your LinkedIn profile with keywords, just let the LinkedIn algorithms do the work, and it can result in you appearing in far higher number of candidate searches than might occur with a more generic profile with just the odd job title. Besides relevancy, I said the second thing I look for is quality. So when selecting profiles, I'm looking for more data points, more reasons for someone to make my target list. So after deciding if a profile could be relevant to my search, I'm quickly looking for clues about quality. Try to identify the A players on paper, those that stand out as successful, because I want to target the top performers for my clients. One or two successes in plain view catches my eye and creates natural intrigue for me to look further over those on LinkedIn who might just provide job titles. Most executives do include successes on their CVs, but tend not to on LinkedIn profiles. It can, however, be a game changer if I'm looking through a couple hundred LinkedIn profiles. So please just think about including one or two just dotted through your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so relevancy and quality is how I scan profiles as an executive recruiter. And those that hit the right buttons first for me will get on my radar and get on my target list first. And they be the ones that will make sure I reach out to in the future as well. Having an online footprint is essential for the executives today, as you'll know, and it's one of the easiest ways to get on recruiters' radars. And importantly, stay on the radar. It plays a big role in the staying part. Online research by recruiters is used in two ways. Firstly, to find people, the names of target candidates relevant to assignments. But more important than that, again, natural curiosity motivates headhunters and their researchers to further investigate prospective target candidates, which is where a wider online footprint comes in. Some executive search software systems even have research modules, areas of the system, and given a name, will trawl the internet for intelligence in addition to CVs and LinkedIn profiles, just looking at the online footprint. So do consider getting yourself a presence across different online mediums, even if a profile hanging on the web with a bio of yourself on as many platforms as possible to become searchable. Some you will be active on, others not, but just having the presence can make a difference, and you could ramp up if needed. So we have the normal profile networking sites, LinkedIn, obviously the most important one if you do nothing else, but obviously regional ones, like Zing for Central Europe and Gator Talent here, they all expand your radar profile. But don't forget the others: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And some might be looking at YouTube and thinking of the YouTubers you could follow. Now, I'm not advocating you suddenly become one of those, trendy, annoying YouTubers posting videos every day that all the kids watch, but just have a professional presence if possible. And remember, it is owned by Google and very searchable. For example, here's a live example. Last year, it came into one of my searches. A banking technology provider briefed me on a head of Europe role, someone with more than 25 years industry experience, but they also wanted a visible leader. And they even suggested the executive might have a presence on YouTube. Well, two of my shortlisted candidates had industry speaking videos on YouTube. I don't think they realised at the time they were even there, but I highlighted this in my notes, and when presenting my shortlist, it went down well with my client, elevating those candidates shortlisted. Simple touch, but effective. Next, if you're in a role, leverage your company's branding assets and thought leadership opportunities available to you. So press releases, public speaking, industry articles, events, webinars, industry groups. Get your name in these and your online presence and personal branding will shoot up. If you're not doing this now, simply let your marketing department know you'd be interested in the company using you for such promotional activities. And a great thing is that good marketing departments will do most of the work for you. At the end of the day, all this you should be doing anyway as part of your personal branding efforts as an executive, to be a beacon of light shining across your industry and your profession, not just for executive recruiters, but your network and even companies directly. Simply put, there's no point being the best kept secret. Having an online footprint isn't the main passive, but you can, and you can sit back hoping the right executive recruiters will find you. But if you're really serious about leveraging executive recruiters, there's definitely a need for you to proactively put yourself on their radar and attempt to stay on the radar, whether you're actively looking or not. So I'm going to close in with some tips on how you might do this proactively in 3 stages: identify, introduce, and maintain. Identify the right executive recruiters for you. To achieve a level of expertise that makes them more effective and efficient, executive recruiters generally align themselves to one or more of 3 category areas. These areas being industry, geography, and role type. So start by identifying and approaching recruiters using these 3 qualifying categories. Industry, so you're in tech, fintech, manufacturing, retail. Some might cover all industries. Geographical region might become down to city, but at an executive level, most cover wider regions and countries. And role, types and levels. Some might be generalists across all C-level roles, or maybe just chief executives, technology, or operations executives. They vary greatly. And in the same way a recruiter is looking for relevancy for them in your CV, you need to turn the tables now and decide which ones are relevant to you to increase your chances. And besides identifying the firms by name that might cover any of the 3 relevant areas for you, a tip is to also try and find the actual search consultants and their researchers from their website, from LinkedIn. And where industry focus is concerned, this is particularly important in the big blue chip firms which might cover multiple industry areas. One other important tip is not to put all your eggs in one basket, say 1 or 2 executive recruiters to rely on. It's too narrow and counterproductive for you. Search assignments are generally handed out exclusively. This means that your long-term relationship with recruiter Jane at search firm 1 is of no value if recruiter Jill of search firm 2 is given an exclusive search that's suitable for you. You need to be on both radars. So draw up a list, maybe as many as 10, 20, 30 firms, and their relevant consultants and researchers. You can refine that over time, but you still need quite a selection. As the smaller the number, the less radars you'll be on, and consequently, the more likely you can miss out. So introduce.
Shawn, if I can just jump in, based on what you said, if anyone in the audience would be interested in finding search firms to approach that way, if you go to the Gated Talent website, you'll see in the main menu an option Recruiter Directory, which will enable you to search firms. We have more than 1,000 search firms listed there. And you can select the sector, let's say financial services. can select the function, let's say marketing, and the location, UK or worldwide, etc. And that will already give you a good list of search firms that could match your requirements. So just to let people know about this.
Well, that's brilliant to know. I'll have to take a look myself for the competition. Okay, that's great. So introduce. So putting yourself on their radar. Yeah. So once you've identified those right search firms and their consultants and researchers, do introduce yourself. Yeah. It's about getting yourself on the radar. And for the benefit of the long term, consider doing this whether you're actively looking or not looking for a new role. As I said, you're just trying to get on their radars initially, and don't worry or feel offended if you don't get a conversation. I know that many job seekers at all levels do get frustrated with the lack of callbacks from search consultants, but it is important to understand and respect the fact that search firms are not in the business of finding jobs for people. Their clients at the search level are the companies that are paying them consultancy fees to fill roles. Knowing you're there is certainly good enough. So simply, you just need to position yourself as a person they're looking for when they have a need of a certain profile type. And I do suggest you use multiple touch points to elicit responses, if nothing else. Email, phone. Just one tip, search consultants do find it hard not to take a call if you're a senior executive in their industry, whereas email or LinkedIn messages are so much easier to manage. Ensure you do connect on LinkedIn and simply introduce yourself by LinkedIn message as well. And mutual connections can be quite powerful, particularly if you know someone that a search firm has placed before. When reaching out to introduce yourself, you don't need to do any heavy selling. Your on-point collateral should do that by itself, hence the importance of that. Simply craft a short to the point message, make it easy, bullet point the information out on a plate rather than long wordy letters, the way that I prefer it personally. Letting them know that, whether that you're on the market, whether you're active or not. Briefly explain your area of expertise and provide your CV or LinkedIn profile with it. Subtly pointing out the relevancy and quality that might be appropriate to their assignments. And also be clear about the type of role you can do and importantly you want to be considered for. Yeah, the more you can box yourself, the more it can actually help. And do ask for a call or a meeting, but if they feel it's appropriate. Yeah, just courteous. You don't need to push or expect one, but a call ultimately is what you want to try and achieve now or in the future, just to build that relationship and your radar profile further. And just taking these steps, just that introduction without any engagement by a call, will get you on the radar, and then you can work on maintaining it or staying on it, even if you don't get that call. Another way of ensuring you're on the right radars, bearing in mind you need to look at this career, in career length, is never miss an executive recruiter's call. It's worth taking even if you're not interested changing jobs at that point in time. Every call with an executive recruiter is a chance to get on their radar for the long term and build a relationship. Perhaps you hadn't identified a particular executive recruiter, even better if they've come to you. Even just an initial 15-minute phone conversation is a small investment of time. And from that discussion, you're also assessing whether they're the right firm to stay in contact with. Are they relevant to you? As not every search firm will be. So maintain your radar presence. You may or may not get a call with an executive recruiter after introducing yourself, but if not, it's most likely because they're not working on any assignments fitting your profile at that moment in time. So continue to make some effort to build and maintain that contact, so you're at least in mind, staying on the radar, and it doesn't have to be time consuming. The way and frequency you do this will be determined perhaps by how actively you're looking or not. But here are a couple of ideas on how you might do this in an effective way. Social interaction is the easiest and least time-consuming way. Just about all executive recruiters are on LinkedIn, and you can leverage that in a very subtle way. Just have a document. You've got your list of all the firms you identified. You've got the URL of the identified recruiters and researchers within it, or perhaps a saved list. If you've got LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and periodically just click through, like, or comment on one of their posts. It really is as simple as that. And to be honest, just a like, can be as powerful as a comment. Frequency, as I said, depends on whether you're actively looking or not. Once a week, once, every 6 months, or once a year, it really doesn't matter. Depends on your own agenda. But natural curiosity, just from that like, will ensure that, the search consultant notices you and you remain on the radar, because your name becomes familiar each time your personal brand becomes known. And yes, you do need to keep that regular contact by sending emails and LinkedIn messages. But with regard to frequency, again, it depends whether you're looking for a role. It might be once a year, just to keep on the radar for the long term. And if you're actively looking, it's important to get the balance right, that it's not too often. Perhaps every other month might be appropriate. Or even at most once a month. But in doing this, a point I want to make today is not just about saying, hello, I'm still here, do you have a job? You may be still trying to get firmly on the radar, or you may have had a call already and want to maintain the contact. And whichever one it is, the natural human way to get someone to reciprocate is to offer them something. So it's not about just saying I'm looking for a job all the time. And so here's a few content ideas here. It's about offering usually. So simply offer to help with any innovation or insight they want. It's literally a one-line email. But they're reminded that you're there, but you're offering something. If you write an article, perhaps a LinkedIn article to increase your online presence, send them a link to read it. You could also ask for their feedback or comment. Offer to help with the referrals of executives for other roles they're currently working on, be it now or in the future. Don't just send them names, but a short email offering them the opportunity to call you anytime to tap into that network that you've got. Or you could refer colleagues directly to that search consultant. And there'll be a feeling that you've done them a favor from the search consultant. It does work on me, actually. And share tips about potential openings or executive movements. And finally, I think this is a hidden one, but I think offers immense value for both parties. Perhaps offer to be interviewed by them for a podcast or a webinar. The recruiter's company will be doing all the work arranging, and you'll be giving up, say, 30 minutes of your time just to talk about yourself, your industry, your role. And besides building rapport, this will increase your industry personal brand and online presence. A double whammy with benefits all round for minimal effort. But finally, do drop the odd message about yourself. Periodically send in the updated CV. Just for their records is the simplest way to do this, and just send the resume whether it's changed or not. So be it once every month or maybe once every 3 months if you're actively looking. It doesn't need to be any more than that, but interspace it with these other ideas. Note, all this is not about selling yourself. It's more about increasing your personal brand, awareness of you, and to stay on and even increase your presence on their radars. And when the time comes, the search consultant will draw the dots and add you to their search long list if he or she has that role. At the end of the day, it's in their commercial interest to do so. So that brings to close my presentation. Just to summarize a couple of points. To get on the executive recruiters' radars in the first place and then stay on there are a range of both active and passive strategies you can employ. Do ensure your collateral is on point and optimized. Remember, executive recruiters are looking for relevancy and quality. It gets you found, and based on what they see, it will dictate if and how they engage with you. Do establish and have a strong online footprint. It will benefit your personal branding and career in so many more ways anyway. And ensure you take active steps to identify, introduce, and maintain relationships with the right executive recruiters. And do remember that it's not an overnight process. You can't turn the tap on and suddenly be on every executive recruiter's target candidate list. It's about laying the trail of crumbs over many years so you're constantly popping up on the radars, and at the right time, the right executive recruiters come to you with the right role. I hope you found this short webinar insightful, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Shawn, for this presentation. We have received quite a few questions actually during the webinar, and we also have questions during that were submitted in advance. So let's try to get through all of them.
Okay.
Okay, let's go for the first one. John was asking, in your field of fintech, what are the important keywords for your for LinkedIn profile?
Right. So in fintech, fintech by itself, I would suggest is not enough. I mean, I'm in fintech, but I'm very capital markets fintech. So I'd say it's, if you're in a very niche, narrow vertical like that, actually you want to go further. Is it capital markets fintech? Is it consumer? Is it e-commerce? Fintech? Is it payments? So actually having the word fintech in there by itself is good, but actually just go one step further by putting out the functional areas of fintech that you're in as well. Yeah. Because if I'm looking for someone on fintech, as capital markets, I'm going to be putting that in the same way a recruiter who's doing retail payments is going to be looking for that terminology on top of the word fintech. Okay.
Of course. Yeah, sure. Next question from Germano. What's your opinion on the value of executive recruiter brokers, companies like InterExec in the UK, and their access to recruiters and contacts at recruiters?
At the end of the day, because we do get sent resumes, yeah. So they're doing a bit of the work for you. So they're doing that bit about the introduction part of of the stages, yeah. It whether at the end of the day you can. What I would say is that yes, they're off a broking service to get you on the right radars or some radars, but they can't guarantee at the end of the day. So what I would say is don't rely on them. Yeah, they're good at getting you out there and getting your CV distributed. We take them in if we find someone of interest, then we'll engage. So they're good at getting your name out there in a much wider audience, but you can't rely on them, as would be my advice. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Next is more of a comment than a question, but I think it's an interesting one. Alice says that she has been told not to connect on LinkedIn with multiple search consultants at the same search firm. The rationale was that individual search consultants compete with one another, and they don't like it when you reach out to their colleagues. Any comments on that?
I don't like the cultures of those search firms. At the end of the day, they should be working in the common interest. I would ignore that advice. Perhaps that was one of those greedy search consultants that gave that advice. But no,
Possibly.
yeah, maybe it was, but no, I wouldn't believe that. That's the wrong advice. Yeah, that's someone being
Okay.
greedy in their own right.
Okay, Alice, now you know what to do. Hans is saying he was an exec abroad. When he turned 35, the number of calls from recruiters declined, and after he turned 50, they stopped. Why is that? He's asking.
Um, well, that's quite a complex question. I mean, what you do get, I'm 51, yeah. So there's no ageism discrimination. I get annoyed sometimes, yes. When I'll get a young executive, who looks at careers of people, like a thoroughbred racehorse, if you know what I mean, yeah. You know, I'll be honest, ageism is still out there, yeah. And I think my age now, I see it even more. I've been, be through it. I'll just be frank and honest. It is subjective ageism and nothing more. Yeah. Ways to get around it is maybe start not putting. We see it from some people. They don't put their year of their education. Maybe they miss off some parts of their early career. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone catches the relevancy and the quality, oh right, that search consultant needs to, if you're trying to stop, paper ageism, which frankly it is, then start, graying some parts of your resume. That's the only way to overcome it, at the end of the day. But yeah, unfortunately, I'll be frank, and it is out there.
It is sadly. Bill wants to know how geographically focused are recruiters. He's trying to find a job in another continent and wonders how much recruiters pass resumes across offices located on different continents.
In terms, if you'd registered, with a search consultant in London, you should definitely build the relationships with the ones in Singapore. Yeah, you know, for example, I mean, they'll have access to the same database, but that doesn't mean the London guys are going to, you know, and girls are going to make you aware of the ones in Singapore. Yeah, so they're not going to. At the end of the day, the consultants in Singapore are going to be doing their own research, and yes, your details might be on there, but if they're on there under London, they're not going to look anyway. So I'd say it's really important to engage with the local search consultants and researchers. Yeah, and even, you know, if you haven't got to that region yet, you know, don't put London on your resume. You know, get yourself a Singapore number if you want. You know, and you can leave it, once again, you know, very great if you haven't made that move yet. Yeah, we see that, and it's perfectly fine, because it's about getting noticed once again and picked up. So you need to put your personal brand out there as someone that, you know, that's looking for a role in Singapore, Singaporeize it, as an, you know, one example, because they won't share internally. You need to engage with the local recruiters at the end of the day, would be my advice.
Sure. Okay, next question from John. Do you need to constantly bombard search firms with your CV when you are out of a job due to COVID, regardless of available roles at that firm?
Short answer is no. You know, once again, it's just about making sure they're on the radar. They'll come to you, you know, if you're relevant, you know, to their roles at that time. Yeah. So it goes back to my, you know, my point. You know, once you've made that introduction, yeah, it's more about you using the passive techniques, I suggest. Or active passive techniques, maybe LinkedIn likes, just to keep on the radar. So no, if you want to do it, John, you know, just maybe if you're actively looking, you know, you've sent the resume on. If you're going to do it, the easiest way to do that is just send an updated resume. But you don't need to do it all the time. Maybe once a month is too often. Yeah, you might do it once a month. Maybe the next month use one of those other tactics about an article or a LinkedIn like or a comment, and maybe then the third month you might just send them an update resume, but you might have not updated it or even updated one word. It doesn't matter. So if you want your resume to fall on the desk again and get read, is just, you know, say you're in, you know, an easy way is to say you're enclosing your up-to-date resume, but not too much. Once they're on the radar, you don't need to do it all the time. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, what is the best way to approach a search consultant about leveraging their network for company introductions, even if they don't have active searches?
Right. Okay. So we're talking about the context of someone saying, right, can you introduce me to your network? Yeah.
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 Or send an
Okay.
introduction email, I suppose. I see that from time to
Yeah.
time in search firms.
Yeah.
We have this fantastic candidate. We're hiding his name, but here is his CV.
Right. Okay. I mean, first of all, it depends on the type of firm. Yeah, so that might do it for you. Yeah, so, you know, if you're talking the more retained, the more senior, the more executive, what I would say is there's less proactive introductions like that, because it's more at the lower level where you'll get those what I call CV specking. Yeah. Okay. But that doesn't mean that senior search consultants, doesn't mean that I don't do it, you know, now then. But it's not sending CVs out. It's more of an executive introduction. But if I'm going to do that, okay, so, you know, say at a more senior level, you know, a sales director or an MD asked me to help, you know, do that. To be honest, the way I'm going to look at it is, first of all, I'm going to want to assess how relevant, you know, and assess the star quality. Yeah. So, because each time I make one of those introductions, you know, I've got to assess whether I think they're relevant and the right quality, you know, whilst being polite for one of those introductions, because I sort of use up a favor each time I do that. Yeah. So it can be done at a senior level, but you know, you can't. It's hard to negotiate and get a search consultant to do that to every candidate that comes through the door, even executive level. If you want to give them a reason to maybe stand out, you know, here's a tip here to do that. You know, you've got the buy, you know, you've had a call with a search consultant, you know, they've said, right, okay, you're suitable for the assignments we're looking at. I'll let you know if anything comes up. Perhaps take that conversation further. One tip might be to say, okay, Search Consultant, I've got 5 companies I'd like an introduction to. Yeah, once again, you're giving something, a bit like I said, you know, building that relationship, giving them something. So you're giving them on a plate, yeah, and then with that, they might then, if they're getting into that discussion with you, they'll probably start drawing more dots of where else they might be able to take you. So if you were going to do it, I would say offer maybe a few company names, whether they're clients of that firm or not, and they might open up their contacts for you. But once again, it depends on the individual, and it depends whether they think, the search consultant thinks you're right for their clients, potentially. Yeah, but it can be done.
Okay, fantastic. Next question is from Sarah. She would like to know how she can re-establish her visibility and contacts with executive search consultants after a long year break.
Okay. So whether it's a 1 year break or or suddenly out of role, I think exactly what I covered in the presentation here. Yeah. So you just make sure your online presence is there, and then that social interaction, and the regular contacts by emails, the simple introduction, and then giving, just to make sure that you're there on the radar and asking for a call, not expecting it, but exactly what I covered in the presentation. I think you're giving out this after you're sending the
Yes,
slide pack, are you,
absolutely.
Jan?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, all those tips that I gave out maintaining the radar presence is the same way about re-establishing at the end of the day.
Okay. I think the next one from Patrick. What should I do if a search consultant does not respond to emails or calls? Well, there's always LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, it can be frustrating. Even sometimes, if you are in the middle of a search, you have been interviewed, and you're waiting to hear, what's the next step, and of course that can take more time that candidates realize sometimes. But if you try to follow up, or if you want to engage with a search consultant that there's no response, what should you do?
Yeah. Well, I suppose there are two sides there, because the first scenario you said about whether someone's in an interview process, that's just a really bad practice. At the end of the day, the good ones will get back, will get back to you, and there's nothing else you can do apart from hassling them if they're not getting back to you by phone, by email, by LinkedIn. But it's a different ball game if if you're introducing yourself. Yeah. So if you think you're right for one of their roles, and you're making 6 or 10 calls because you want that, and they're not get back to you, look, that's, you need to have let that search consultant know about yourself by introduction, by email. They're not going to miss about it, because if they can make a placement, you're good for an assignment or good for a role, they're not silly enough to miss out on the commercial opportunity. Yeah. So if they feel you've got the, if you're relevant and got the right quality for what they're looking for. Yeah. So at the end of the day, a good search consultant should get back to you, even if it's yes or it's a no at the end of the day. Yeah. But there's nothing more than anyone else could do. If I get frustrated with customer service, my electrical, you can only keep trying at the end of the day. But just, they should respond once. But if you've got a response and it's not quite right, then you need to drop it. If you're then pushing back saying, well, I am right, or I want that call, then I think you need to respect you probably won't get a call back once you've had that initial response at the end of the day. So it's a balance, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so that's why it's important to have more than one search consultant as a contact.
Well, yeah, it's relevancy, Jan. We talked about, I'm looking for people that are relevant for me. Not every search company out there is going to be relevant for every individual at the end of the day. It's just through your career, you've just got to identify, which ones are relevant. And then of the ones that you think are relevant and you find that are relevant, those are engaging with you. And you'll come up with your dozen favorites, So which is why it's a long-term horizon people need to look, not a short-term at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we get coming to the last question for today. Monica asks, how do you get a recruiter to work with you, since they are generally working for their clients and not for the candidates?
Okay, it depends what the context of work with means. Because obviously, if it's like the other question, when it's like work with to make introductions to their network, as I said, then we sort of discussed that about maybe give them something, maybe 5 companies, and maybe make sure we explain the relevancy to what they're doing, and then there. But if it's work with in another way, the other context maybe work with in terms of career advice. Yeah. So generally, search consultants aren't there to give career advice to everyone. If it's work with in that context, look for the ones that do career coaching. Yeah. So you might need to pay, maybe if you want them to work with you on your CV, your LinkedIn, profile, or even, a strategy then I would say, yeah, look for those that might have a career coaching service in your sector. If you're looking at, if that's what you mean by working with Monica. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of this, if you go to your final slide, Shawn, I think you could also mention the fact that you do offer coaching services for career coaching services for executives in the fintech sector, correct?
I do, but yeah, very very niche. So yeah, if anyone out there today, is in and around the financial markets or investments with technology, yes, I can do it for that area. Because once again, it's about using that expertise, and that's where I'm most powerful at the end of the day. But yeah, outside in other industry verticals, I don't do it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there'll be a link to that page on your website in the follow-up email for people who may be interested. So
Thank you.
hopefully some of them will be. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of this webinar. So thank you so much, Shawn, for being with us today again. And hopefully we'll get to do another one in the next few months.
That's brilliant. We will, Jan. Okay. Thank you again.
All right. Take care. Goodbye, everybody. Good afternoon.